Hi, my name is Logan Beeman, and I will be going over the topic of Chapter 3, Sensation and Perception, specifically visual perception. What is sensation and perception? There are 5 basic senses that give you information based on your environment, and those are sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. What you see is sight, what you hear is sound, what you taste is taste, and what you feel is touch. What gives off a scent is smell. Sensation is all of those as a physical effect, and perception, on the other hand, is how the mind processes those sensations. For example, if you hear a melody, that's a sensation. If it's a beautiful melody, that's a perception. It's how you process that song. I'll be going over visual perception over the next 5 slides, as I found it the most interesting and intriguing for how the mind processes it. To the right of the slide, next to the triangle, you'll see ink splotches. And what do you see in those? It could be various figures, it could be objects throughout your daily life, and that's completely normal. Your mind is just putting together the bits and pieces of a normally abstract splotch of ink to fit a pattern. If you're trying to focus on something, like a special kind of bird, you'll notice that the background seems to meld together. This is because of fine ground perception, which is used to distinguish what's the background and what's important in the moment. Our minds also group items together based on how similar they are. And these 4 similarities are proximity, similarity, continuity, and closure. Proximity is grouping based on how the objects are close together. An example of this would be a car parked near a tree or a bottle near a door. Similarity is grouping based on how something appears to be the same. For example, a flock of doves or a herd of cows. Continuity is grouping based on an imaginary unity, like dotted lines. Closure is grouping based on a major goal, such as the design next to the ink splotch. There are 2 triangle outlines that can be made and 3 circles that can be made out of that, but they're not actually complete, as you can see in the diagram. The final forms of grouping is top-down and bottom-up. Top-down uses a reference as a guide to imagine the task, like a blueprint or schematics to something being built. Bottom-up is being given all the materials to build something, but with no visual guide to it. Motion is relatively simple. You perceive motion based on how something moves in comparison to other objects. For example, if you're riding on a bus, you know which direction you're going based on the objects and landmarks outside of the bus getting closer or further away. This helps us differentiate if we're moving or the world around us is moving. Stroboscopic motion is an illusion of motion using changing pictures. These are commonly known as frames, which move at about 16 new frames per second to make something appear to be moving naturally. Slow motion records using higher frame rates, around 100, and playing it back at 22 frames per second. Depth comes in 2 forms, monocular and binocular. Monocular is the illusion of depth found in art through shading, texture, and relative size. Binocular is how our eyes perceive depth using retinal disparity, which is how focused the object is, and convergence, which is where our eyes move to converge on the object. Lack of depth perception is from relying too much on one eye to see, whether that be eye problems in one eye or other outliers. Constancy is the perceived assumption that something is the same under different circumstances, such as size, brightness, shape, and color. Size is assuming something is the same even when perceived at a distance. For example, someone far away seems much smaller than they actually are, but you know that they're actually their average size just at a further distance. Brightness is the appeared change in brightness from a different shade of background. For example, a white dot on a black background will show up much better than a white dot on a much brighter background, like a white background. Shape is the consistent shape of an object, even when seen at a different angle. If you look at a cup and you rotate it around, you still know the general shape of the cup, even though your eyes are seeing a completely different shape. Color is the appeared changing color due to different forms of lighting. A famous example of this would be the dresses to the side. They are the same color, they're just perceived differently because of the what appears to be a filter or lighting on the dresses. Finally, illusions. If you look over to the right, that image appears to be rotating, but it's not. This is because our eyes can only process so much and send it back to our brain at a certain speed. Now, we're trying to pick up all of the image at the same time, but we're picking up on the lighter colors quicker and the darker colors slower. And so it starts to give it a rotational pattern as it tries to fill in the blanks of where things might be. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are my sites.